Gentlemen and variations thereof, welcome to the Selectives Lorecast, a casual Elder Scrolls podcast. I'm starting my local recording. My name is Chris, Rotten Deadite, and with me today are...
I'm Zells, also known as Zells.
I'm James, also known as Aramithius.
And I am Felix, also known as Banohana Masaishi, and also starting local recording in a minute. Sorry, my bad.
Hey!
I forgot about that.
And so today we're discussing Sermon 35, which I believe this is the right way to use this word, the penultimate sermon?
Yes.
Yes.
Depends on how you count
Well,
the sermon.
That's accurate.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
if we're
that is
doing
accurate.
37 or 0 or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And so...
And local recording has started, so huzzah.
Fantastic. Me too. So, Sermon 35 comes weirdly after the sermon, 34. It comes after
Yay, we can count.
34, where Vivek outright tells Nerevar that Vivek's going to murder him. And as we've been sort of trained by the lessons, every scripture lesson comes after a sermon that has something to do with the subject of the scripture. So because of the okay, so first off, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we spend 2 days on 35, because this is at the core of Vivek's entire worldview, of Vivek's entire paradigm, is the concept of love and the responsibility of the lover in a magical sense. And so we have to really kind of nail this shit out of this, or else all the work we've done up until this point has been for nothing, and we would have wasted our time. And if that happens, then I'm blaming everybody that I've been casting with, and certainly not me. So it's a real puzzler, and of the many years that I've been studying the lessons, I have never felt that elated moment of enlightenment where everything just sort of clicks into place with Sermon 35. I've been able to sort of intellectually explain it. Excuse me. And I've been able to go through it piecemeal and kind of like reason it out and go, yeah, all that sort of makes sense. But at the end of the day, I'm still sort of left like feeling like, yeah, technically I've studied for the final exam, but I just don't know for sure that I'm going to pass, you know? And and anybody who's been to school knows that feeling. When you've got it, you know you've got it. Yeah. And you walk into class and you ace the shit out of that exam because you know you understand the material. And this is not that for me. And that frightens me, because if anybody should understand Sermon 35, it should be the guy who spends a lot of his spare time studying it. So I'm consoling myself going into this with the idea that maybe it just hasn't been said right. And that's what I'm waiting on, is that the moment where somebody or myself hopefully phrases something in such a way that it all just lights up in my head and I go, oh, fuck, I've definitely internalized or whatever. We've never come up with an explanation, a good word for this idea of understanding something with your being instead of just your brain. And I one of these days I want to I want to corner a linguist at a party and ask him, you know, like, or polyglot or something, and go, does any culture have something like this?
Are you familiar with
closest
Grok?
Grok, yeah, that's where I would go.
Yeah, I prefer not to take a technically fictional word.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm so permanently online that when you said Grok, I was like, oh, you mean Elon's awful AI assistant on Twitter?
No.
And yeah, okay. I'm glad that's not the Grok people were thinking of.
No,
okay.
no.
Very good.
Gone Crazy back soon. Oh, well, it's good to
Hello.
have you back then. Gone Crazy back soon. So that's a hell of a name. So Sermon 35.
She's a hell of a guild leader.
Oh, okay. Hey.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Sermon 35 has that's Grog, not Grok. Yeah. So when we discuss Sermon 35, like I was saying, try to keep in mind Sermon 34's ending and its relevance to the idea of fate and I don't know, acting love under will, etc. because unfortunately, it seems to me that inconveniently, Vivek's definition of love does not 100% align with Aleister Crowley's definition of love, because if it did, we'd be okay. And oh my God, is that a horn you're drinking? Jesus Christ, James.
Yes.
Bring in the
Yeah, it's awesome.
style. Oh my God. Let me get Crowley's.
Us? Classy? Paris.
No, just him with the horn.
Yeah.
Crowley wrote a whole essay on love, and
Only one.
no, like specifically trying to explain it, and I'll pour through it when somebody else starts talking. But let's get us into Sermon 35 here. So the scripture of love. The formulas of proper Velothi magic continue in ancient tradition, but that virility is dead, by which I mean at least replaced. Okay, so that's good, because this is not the worst sentence in the world, as it turns out.
No.
No.
I'm sorry you had to read that essay. It's not... It was... He rambled a bit. I blame the heroin. The formulas of proper Velothi magic. So formula... When Vivek's talking about formulas of magic, that's like, magic is supposed to be somewhat mathematical in nature. It's supposed to have structure and an order of operations and so on. So that's... There's nothing particularly mysterious happening here other than it being about magic. The formulas of proper Velothi magic... That's a twist. So that means that there is proper Velothi magic, according to Vivek, and improper Velothi magic. And that is something that fans can argue a lot about. There's not really any classification. There's not even a list, for fuck's sake, of what Velothi magic means. And it's uncertain what Vivek means when he's talking about Velothi magic, because he could be talking about the magic of Daedric relationship that Veloth would have encouraged, the Daedric worship. This could also be a reference to a number of magic is built entirely out of X and OR gates. Baka, you motherfucker, don't make me nerd out in the middle.
Is Baka secretly the last Dwemer? Because that feels like their outlook.
You can see the vein. Look at that. All right. So Velothi magic probably has a lot. Well, actually, used to be there was a quest at one point in early conceptualization of Morrowind, where you would the formulas of proper Velothi magic consideration. Could this be talking about the tribunal replacing the good Daedra?
Yes.
Don't get ahead of me.
That would be my gut.
So
We all have thoughts.
Actual Velothi magic was at one point or another going to be a quest in Morrowind where you would take a wise woman from an Ashlander village and bring her out to a particular location, and she would begin to perform a communion of some kind. A ritual, and during that ritual there would be like a circle on the ground with magic beyond it, and Nyx hounds, what turned out to be the model for Nyx hounds, would start to come out of the ground and out of the space in sort of like the Hounds of Tindalos, which was originally sort of like their pitch, and they would come out of strange angles and so on and attack you, and that's what you would defend yourself against. And so the Nyx hounds eventually just became an occupant of eventually became fauna of Morrowind, but originally they were supposed to be these Daedric beasts that would attack the witch, sort of the Velothi witch, and you would have to defend her by killing them as a matter. That's the only Velothi traditional magic that I can think of that isn't also in one way, shape, or another the usual types of magic that you get in Elder Scrolls, or in Morrowind, I should say.
It sort of strikes me as an idea of kind of tying in with Velothi traditions and just general cultural religion and such, and it sort of ties in with more general definition of magic that I think I've seen, which kind of I think links with what you've described there. That idea that if you think of religion as supplication to a deity, magic is a way of or supplication to a deity through approved channels. Magic is a way of treating with the deity as an equal. Is sort of the fundamental difference between the two, which is why you can have some religions that don't like the idea of magic, and then some that will have seemingly magical practices as part of their general function. It's the idea
that
of
they don't consider them magic or whatever.
But because my current frame of reference is Norse culture, because I'm reading a book on that at the moment, but it's the idea of the gods are there, we don't necessarily like them too much, but they need to be appeased in order for us to get on with our lives. So you have ritual practices and so on that are part of a formula that are magical in the sense of it does stuff for you and it doesn't require an intermediary, and it's not designed to abase yourself before the deity and that sort of thing. So so that's possibly something to do with how Velothi magic is sort of phrased here, or at least that's one difference I think could happen, particularly as but the Velothi are engaged with ancestor worship and dealing with spirits and so on. It feels much more true to that way of thinking about real world magic than other forms of fantasy magic, if you like.
Hendris points out that there are not many rituals, actual proper rituals in Elder Scrolls games. They're generally going to be things that are like quest related, so there'll be like an event that happens at a certain place for a certain reason.
Or, go retrieve X object from X tomb.
Yeah, there's a lot of Jewish and Gnostic magic involves bodily purification, daily prayer or on the hour prayer, studying and reading, prayer, and then sequestering yourself away from other people. And then once you've done this for a certain number of days to demonstrate your humility and devotion to God, you then begin what we traditionally think of as the ritual, but in fact all the prep work was also the ritual.
Yes, absolutely.
And this is not considered magic because, it's hard to say why. And a number of YouTubers that I've watched have opinions about this. There doesn't really seem to be any rhyme or reason. It's a little bit like determining what is canon in Christian in the Catholic Bible. It seems almost arbitrary. But
I think Owain comes up with a good distinction in chat. Is religion often involves following the will of another being. Magic is exerting one's own will.
And that is often what these rituals honestly end up being, is that you are praying for knowledge, or you are praying for protection from things or something. It's hard to say. It kind of comes down to your definition of prayer, which changes seemingly depending on what priest you're talking to. It's either a supplication for God to simply remember that you have a need, or to remember that you exist, which begins to question, why would God forget? And then, or that you need something, or that you're looking for, assistance in something, at which point that sort of suggests that God didn't have a plan for you, and that that he's not omnipotent. And I don't know. It's a very strange idea to think of metaphysically magic in Christianity with an all-knowing God. It's hard. Whatever George Lucas says is canon is canon. All right, yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Well, maybe once upon a time, but not
anymore though. Yeah, right. That's different.
So a couple other things, but I think Zel's wanted to go first, so please continue.
I do see the word formula as something that is prescribed. So it's like a recipe, and I think that in the Velothi magic, proper Velothi magic, you're doing what the three Daedra said. That this is the way, this is the, and to me the word magic here is bigger. I think it's more the cultural, it's the life, it's the whole thing. You're nomads, and you pray in this way, and you eat these kinds of foods, and it's the whole deal. And only the Ashlanders are still doing that. But their virility is dead.
Well, if we assume that, and I think you're right, that proper Velothi magic is Ashlander magic. And that's kind of what Vivek is saying here, is that it continues in ancient tradition, but that virility is dead, by which I mean at least replaced. And to summarize the sentence, Chad is correct. That's what was happening here. Vivek is saying Ashlanders are still, the ancient Velothi are still doing what they do, but the virility, the power behind it, has been replaced by Almsavie. Yeah.
So, couple things on that, though, to kind of go further down the religion and magic rabbit hole. I open up the conversation to chat and people here with a question. What is Redguard magic?
Well, the easy answer to that would be the Shahai, the spirit sword.
Yeah.
That's one of them.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a form.
Kirkbride suggested memory stones.
Yes, that's another.
The transformation of Ansei from men into women is a ritual
Another one,
they still use.
So right,
that's it.
Yeah. But no, that's good. Another one that is brought up in ESO is how they use the stars to kind of decide when and where to do battles. Like, oh, when we see that, like, the steed is in the sky, we follow its charge. That leads us into victory. So those are all different kinds of magic that aren't what we would consider more traditional forms of magic, such as, like, enchanting, illusion, things like that. Like, hell, the whole story of, like, oh yeah, the hero dirge sank Yoko beneath the waves. So I'm just sitting there thinking, like, so earthbenders and shit that maybe also made the memory stone. So, like, is earth magic or memory magic a thing in, like, ancient Redguard culture? And the reason why I asked this is that it also shows that there's a similar other group that we can see in the Elder Scrolls universe that has a similar kind of history of doing things, but it no longer seems to be effective. So why is that? Because we see that other kinds of magic are effective. So why is it that the magic is not effective for the two people who seem to be the ones who have, in broad strokes, had a part of their, or really not a part, but like a core part of their history and core identity, really, be one of exile, fleeing to a new place, and making it a new home? What can we infer and, like, pull from that? What's the connection there?
If the core of the magic is relational, then the terms of the relationship are also geographically based, is the obvious conclusion there. That, or at least based to the nature of the people, potentially, because you can make an argument that, at least for the Velothi, there's been some shifts about who they are, in some way, shape, or form. Not necessarily just Kaima to Dunmer, but even transferring from Somerset to Resdain. You can argue that what they were doing could potentially change what they were, because they shifted from being Aldmer or Altmer to Kaima or something like that. So
right.
there are cultural changes which change the terms of the deal that underlies the magic.
Exactly, and that's also what happened to the Redguards. They were Yokudans, and then they became the Crowns and the Forebears.
Yes.
So for me, the connection between, like, the virility is dead is that it also has to do with change. It had, like, it's not just geographically based. I think that is a huge part of it, but it is also that when you change, it also means they have to leave a certain part of yourself or part of your culture behind. That's why places are no longer the same the way that, like, we imagine. Like, people are like, the good old days. And I'm like, man, people have been talking about the good old days since, like, forever. I'm sure the Gauls in France were like, yeah, Gaul just ain't the same, unlike the good old days of 500 BC, unlike 400 BC. God, it's shit now to be a Gaul in 400 BC. Like,
can't have shit out here and wherever the fuck we're at.
Yeah, so, like, things are constantly changing and growing and evolving, and that also means that, like, the impact of what was once held as, like, a core magical belief also changes. And I also want to throw a real world analogy into this, in that a lot of magical and spiritual practices fill some kind of need from a people or a group that have to a certain extent, in some way, been very traumatized. So I'll give a few examples. In the Caribbean, you have things like voodoo and Santeria. These are usually a mixture, a kind of like syncretic form of traditional spiritual beliefs from the places that they came from, as well as the imposition of Christianity, and trying to meld those two to find a new way forward. And that results in things like voodoo and Santeria. Another thing that people may or may not be familiar with is indigenous people here in North America for the longest time had what was basically a cult known as the ghost dance, where the idea was they would do a kind of dance and a ceremony, and eventually all the ghosts of their ancestors would return to Turtle Island and drive out all the settlers who had like killed them and are oppressing their descendants. Of course, this hasn't come to pass yet. Who knows? Maybe the ghost dance will occur at some point. But that was something that was very popular for a while, which of course was happening during the most violent points of displacement and dispossession in their history. Just like we see the impacts and rise of things such as voodoo and Santeria being in the early neo-colonial period in the Caribbean as they're bringing slaves over because there's no more indigenous people because they wiped them out or they died from disease or a sick and twisted combination of the two. So that's another element that we should also look at to then also reframe how we understand magic. Yes, James, I'm almost done. To reframe magic as we understand it in the Elder Scrolls universe as well, because the Yokudans were fleeing an apocalyptic event. The Velothi were fleeing what they felt was wrongness and persecution in understanding how the entire universe was, and they had this long arduous journey beset by actual fucking gods the entire way. Right? So these are other elements that I want people to think of and consider, and not just about like what we're talking about in terms of magic, what it is, what it isn't, some of the actual real world and how it should be understood and filtered through this lens.
Yeah. And go ahead.
I hadn't thought of it until Felix was talking about the geographical displacement and the trauma, but and I think somebody in chat commented too, they're being separated from their towers as well.
Yeah.
So so the thing about the Yakudans and the fleeing Altmer who became Keimer is that they have been separated from their tower, so they're no longer they no longer have that connection. They've got to form another connection, and that's, I would think, part of what proper Velothi magic is that maybe the good Daedra were giving them the tools to be able to form a bond with Lorkhan's heart once they made it to Vardenfell.
So is that why orcs don't like magic? Because they so often lose their tower?
Maybe so.
Well,
possibly.
Yeah. But also, their god literally got eaten and shat out by another god. So,
but it also implies, although if that virility is now dead, the virility of proper Velothi magic is dead. That implies that the modern House Dunmer, or even House Keimer, if you want to go that far, are not as connected to the Red Tower as they would think.
Well, if they're connected to the tribunal, then the tribunal are connected to the tower.
Yeah.
It's all middle management, baby.
Always a bad idea.
So, truth. Okay, the next sentence. Truth owes its medicinal nature to the establishment of the myth of justice. So this is related to the previous sentence. I'm skipping to it. I'm not skipping anything. Truth owes its medicinal nature to the establishment of the myth of justice. So we already qualified truth as something that is established by people, by or by a person, by those in power. And what this sentence is actually saying is that justice is a myth in the respect that it is a story and not a real thing, and that truth can heal people, can be a good thing, because truth allows the establishment, it allows the creation of the idea of justice, of not retribution, not revenge, but justice. That bad things will be punished appropriately, and that good things will be rewarded appropriately. This is, of course, not the case, Terry Pratchett has a great quote about it that I don't remember unhelpfully. But it's a but it does. It's one of the few times that justice or a concept like justice is mentioned by Vivek in the 36 Lessons, because I don't think Vivek's worldview, I don't think Vivek's paradigm relies on justice as being a thing. And karma isn't like a vending machine. That's very good. Yeah.
The thing that I get from that is that it's the idea of truth as in its medicinal nature. That has a whole bunch of phrases as it's put elsewhere. Things like the truth will set you free, and the idea of sunlight is the best disinfectant, even if you want to go insofar as that. It's kind of get everything out into the open, so everyone can see what's going on. Everything will be fine. Is the idea, because that idea is if everyone knows what's going on, is with perfect knowledge, you will have perfect action, is the theory there.
Right.
Underlies that everything will be as it should be if everything is out in the open, because you need that idea of how everything should be in order to actually. No, I'm losing my thread there. But
do you mean perhaps if everything is allowed to operate as it should?
Yeah.
Then everything will be fine.
Yes.
Okay.
Because you can then see how it works. The system can be corrected. The truth will out. All of those sorts of ideas are reliant on the idea of a just universe. For their foundation,
or at the very least a just system.
Yes.
Because the truth will out relies on the idea of or truth and justice are both reliant on each other in the respect that in order to have true justice, you have to know all the facts. You have to know what is true and what is false. But as anybody who's been through Philosophy 101 in college will tell you, it's almost impossible to determine what the truth is. So in that respect, when people who get law degrees are lucky enough to go through an ethics course or a philosophy course for law, one of the things that they come out saying is that you don't do law, you practice law. Which means that you are going to get shit wrong. You know, mistakes will be made, people will suffer unnecessarily, and that's the nature of law, because justice is a construct and it's a goal, but it's not a goal that can be reached. If you want to be generous about it.
Mistakes were made.
Yeah, mistakes were made.
Well, like,
I may have been on the wrong side of that whole giant asteroid thing.
But like, yeah, there's a good point though about justice, is that like a couple things, right? It's both a construct, and also some people's idea of justice, or like certain nations, ethnic groups, etc., their version of justice is probably going to be different from someone else's form of justice. So in that sense, justice is subjective. Thankfully, a lot of us can agree on like some core tenets, but just like there are going to be differences, and so that should be accepted. I guess not accepted, but just like understood as a reality. And the other part of that is, justice is also like a construct in terms of, well, what's the worst crime? Like I've seen and heard stories of homeless people going to jail for shoplifting like $5, maybe $10 of food or snacks or something like that. Meanwhile, dudes who like pilfer millions from innocent Americans, Canadians, Brits, whatever, they get a slap on the wrist and like either probation or barely any jail at all. And it's like, well, who has actually done the most social harm? Who's actually stolen the most? And like, does that mean justice, should it be a one size fits all punishment policy, or should it scale? Like, these are other questions that should be considered, but we tend not to think of it that way, and no one really asks them, unfortunately.
So well, I was going to say, like, we can kind of carry this thread into the next sentence, because this is all like we're going to spend a few sentences on this idea, and then things are going to go right off the rails.
As they do.
So its curative properties it likewise owes to the concept of sacrifice. Princes, chiefs, and angels all subscribe to the same notion. So let's unpack that a little bit. How does truth, the curative properties of truth, relate to the concept of sacrifice? And how does that relate to the idea of leadership, which I think is or leadership, and I mean leadership in both culture, tribe, and religion, which I think is the point of princes, chiefs, and angels.
To answer the first one of those, it's down to the idea of justice as in retribution, as in payment for a thing. The idea that in order for a wrong to be righted, some sort of sacrifice must be made by the guilty party, or that they need to sort of that they need to make a sense of do something to set the world back the way it should be. I'm using that same language again, by their acts of giving something up or returning something to the courts, paying the victim some sort of compensatory money, that sort of thing,
or sacrificing a goat so that the rain will come.
Okay.
You know, see what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Princes, chiefs, and angels might refer to the divine right of kings. Maybe I would argue that chiefs are elected, but princes are not. Princes are inherited. Chiefs are elected. Angels are angels. So I think this is kind of like a threefold idea of princes, that's in rulership by monarchy, if you want. So inheritance, well, I didn't vote for you, you know. Chiefs, somebody you do elect, somebody who is voted for, and then angels as the representations of gods. In other words, rulers that are divine, that do have divine right. You know?
all of those. Well, you can argue that kings have the same idea because, as
usually do.
Yakni said, divine right of kings. But all of those principles rely on an underlying system that the world is functioning as it should be. That either democracy is the right way to choose someone, chiefs, because elections are fine and not fraudulent and not misrepresented, and all those sorts of questions. And then princes, you go to the divine right of kings. It is right that I should rule because of my birth, because we are the right people to rule, because we are the divine lineage, etc., etc. And angels, I have been appointed by God to bring this message, or whatever, or to do whatever. There's the case that there's this idea of a station that is conferred by a thing that is assumed to have some sort of just authority.
Are chiefs elected in Elder Scrolls, or when we talk about the word chief, is it by force?
Well, chiefs
reaching heaven by force.
My assumption is that if you are a chief, then you are somebody who can be ousted by, you know, a competing person or something. Yeah. Okay.
Because even you're right though, because when we look at orcs, generally speaking, there is no election.
Right. That is accurate.
Generally, someone is beaten over the head. But even there, you've got the idea of it needs to be done in the proper way. You have to be dragged into the circle and ritual combat commences, sort of idea.
And so an orc chief could be outed by one of his subjects by just right of force, which has apparently happened. So
also, man, like, as a side note, I just love that the orcs are basically just Afghans that they threw into the Elder Scrolls universe. Like, they got names. The Code of Malakath is really just a repainted Pashtunwali. Like, come on now. Like,
I've been trying to think about the orcs as a nomadic disruptive element. I've been doing a lot of research into the folks from the Central Asian steppe, and it just feels like orcs are trying to fulfill that social role without the horsepower.
Right. Neil correctly points out in chat, beating people over the head is no way to establish the executive branch. We all know that water tarts lobbing swords is where it's at. Yes.
100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I didn't vote for you. So this is a view primarily based on a prolific abolition of an implied profanity seen in ceremonies, knife fighting, hunting, and the exploration of the poetic. Here we go.
Okay.
So,
let's unpack that for a minute.
So this is a view. We're talking about the idea of justice, primarily based on a prolific abolition of an implied profanity.
Stuff that everyone is not allowed to do.
Yes. So what that profanity is seen in ceremonies, knife fighting, hunting, and the exploration. Oh no, I'm sorry. This is a view. I'm sorry. The prolific abolition is seen in ceremonies, knife fighting, hunting, and the exploration of the poetic. So in other
Yes.
words, the idea of the curative properties of truth. So
It's a reiteration of the myth of justice. It's a retelling of the myth that is the tale of justice itself.
knife
That
fighting,
justice works, etc.
the better fighter will win.
Yep.
Okay. Hunting, a skilled hunter will always capture his target. Ceremonies, which is if I complete the ceremony properly and with the right faith, then I will get what the ceremony is supposed to produce. And fourth, the exploration of the poetic.
An expression of human nature is what I was sort of thinking there. That poetry is powerful if it expresses some sort of truth about the human condition.
I think that's where he was going with this, is that poetry is the exploration of truth, or the search for truth.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've never really had that adequately explained to me. I've heard people say it, but like I don't. I'm sure somebody out there will be able to explain to me how poetry and truth go hand in hand, but it sounds an awful lot like poetry.
It's when you divorce the notion of truth and fact, where we tend to conflate the two. Just to use an Indiana Jones quote, just to the start of it, archaeology is a search for facts. If you
not
want
truth.
truths, if you want truths, Professor something or the philosophy professor someone or other is down the hall.
Right.
Is the idea that facts and truth are separate is sort of the core thing here, and that truth within poetry is something that folks can relate to as part of the universal condition. That good poetry speaks to something that a lot of humans will relate to or understand or see of themselves reflected in those words, in those circumstances, etc. Which again goes back to the same idea. Myth is supposed to do the same thing. Myth is supposed to relate to some sort of undergirding. Well, again, we're going vaguely into the idea of Jungian archetypes, but I don't think it has to go necessarily that far.
Cross Carl Jung off your bingo cards, everybody.
Cross Carl Jung off your bingo cards.
Mythology is about trying to find truth. It's about trying to create fact in a way, but it's about truth in the respect that it's about trying to find out. Mythology is about trying to find out why things happen, trying to explain why things happen the way that they do.
Yeah.
The way that you phrased it in terms of all of those rituals having prescribed actions that lead to a certain result, I think specifically, since the word is poetry and not art, with poetry there should be a certain rhyme or a certain stanza or meter or something, some kind of formula that you are following. And so it becomes, if you do it right at the end, and I would think particularly for the poet Vivek, there should be a truth that can be spoken in poetry that cannot be spoken otherwise.
Sure. Yeah, I just don't know what that is.
Yeah, no, fair. Totally fair.
So on the ritual of occasions, which comes to us from the days of the cave glow, I can say nothing more than to loosen your equation of moods to lunar currency. Okay, so the ritual of occasions. What have we defined ritual as?
A series of actions done to either mark something or achieve some particular purpose.
It relies on the concept of justice.
Yes.
And so what is the ritual of occasion, which comes to us from the days of the cave glow?
So my gut goes to something commemorative.
Wait, is the
cave glow
platonic cave? Yeah, exactly. So the days of the cave glow could be the earliest days of the Velothi when they were hiding in caves. Could be. But I would suggest what Felix is suggesting, which is that the cave glow is the platonic, is Plato's cave. It's the very earliest days of the exploration of truth. What? Yeah. What, James? What?
I just don't like how often Plato's an allegory of the cave.
Don't blame me. Blame Kirkbride. Not every cave is Plato's cave. First off, let's just say that. Yes. So I'm not 100% convinced that that's what we're talking about here. I kind of feel like the days of the cave glow is probably the earliest days of survival, existence.
Yeah.
And so the ritual of occasions, I think, it is not something that I can quickly define. It's got to be something very early. Sometimes a cave is just a cave. Yeah. It's got to be solstice commemorations. The
Yep.
ritual of
Yep.
occasions. Yes, that could be.
Yes.
Yeah, the recognition or the worship of the yearly cycle. That's a very good idea. Yeah.
Could
Well,
it be
yeah.
transitional rituals from society, like marriages and deaths and births, those kinds of
Okay.
things?
Sure.
Or
yeah.
even memorial stuff that you are
Mhm.
recognizing that an event occurred,
Births
like
and deaths.
Passover.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can say nothing more than to loosen your equation of moods to lunar currency. Okay, so this is a tough, grammatically speaking, a tough sentence.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
We say nothing more than to loosen your equation of moods. What is an equation of moods?
No, the equation of moods to lunar currency means you are saying that moods and lunar currency are the same thing.
Yeah, that's how I always took
Oh,
that.
okay. So the equation is in like the equaling of
Yes.
moods to
Yeah.
lunar currency. So don't. I can say nothing more than to loosen your equation of moods to lunar currency. Should it be equivalency?
Maybe.
Don't be so up and down and wild in your moods.
Or-
Is
Que no
how-
los dos. Why not both?
Or
No, the process of equating one thing with another, that does add up. Yeah.
yeah.
It
or
does
the
add
idea-
up. Yeah. Nailed it.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I also would go along with this idea of moods. It's not necessarily kind of emotional stuff. If part of me is wondering whether it's kind of equating with Heideggerian moods, which I honestly remember very, very vaguely.
Mhm.
But moods, as far as Heidegger is concerned, is the idea that moods are your mode of being. And that is both linked and not to your idea of your emotional state. That how you feel and how you perceive and everything relates to how your world is sort of the idea of moods in this sense. It's much more totalizing than you are happy or
Fair
you are
enough.
sad
Mhm.
or something like that. And then if we're relating it back to lunar currency and
Right.
Yagni, yes, we're probably going on the assumption of lunar currency as souls. The idea of equating lunar currency and mood in that sense. So we're equating ways of being with souls or something more metaphysical. And just tying it back into the whole idea of things like on the ritual of occasions, so relating to how you perceive or how you conduct rituals to mark time or other, which is again another sort of thing that ties into ways of being in the loosest sense, in that we are now in summer, we are now in winter. This means different things for how we practice. I'm possibly making a bit too many assumptions here.
Yeah,
but
I feel
that
like
feels,
we're like, I like the directions you're going in; they all make sense.
Yeah.
But they don't really collectively add up.
no.
Individually,
That's
I
fair
can like each individual word in the sentence makes sense, but collectively, I'm having a problem with it.
So,
Yeah,
but if I'm understanding correctly, what you just said was that if your moods are not your lunar currency, then you are not your fucking khakis, is what he's telling you.
Maybe
Yeah.
maybe what Vivek's saying here is that that
Or
you're
or that
no,
your
I thought I
mode
had
of
something, but I guess not.
or that your mode of being, your mood as such, does not have the eternal relevance that you think it does if we're equating lunar currency with souls.
Yeah.
It's not as important as you think.
Well,
Moods to the soul. Let people express what they feel in their souls. Another poetry. Loosen your equation of moods to the soul.
Chat is killing me today.
good chat. But okay. Maybe then there's another way of looking at it in terms of, the first way that Chris had kind of interpreted it, in the sense of It's not necessarily, equal to, but rather you take up the sum of the different moods, and that provides, you put that through an equation, and that gives you an answer, and thus the value for lunar currency, perhaps.
Okay, how about this? Let's take everything we've talked about so far. We're talking about truth is a result of Wait, this is a callback to when we were talking about Velothi tradition.
Truth is magical.
And I think on the whole, I'm trying to get the big picture of the last few sentences. The curative properties, other likewise concept of sacrifice. Shit, I'm almost there. Hold on. in sermon occasions was come. So the ritual occasions is Vivek talking about the ancient, the earliest days of Velothi, the old Velothi, not the new. And this is relevant to the truth is magical and aetherius, isn't it? Then we are establishing that the ancient formulas of Velothi magic, the traditions of Velothi culture, are not the true versions of anything, that they are no greater or worse than the current tribunal state, because the ideas of justice and truth and the values of truth are invented by poets and leaders and people who rely on the idea of justice and sacrifice.
It becomes entirely instrumental. That truth and so on all get kind of bent into serving the goals of justice and so on.
Which is a fallacy to begin with. Which is a construct. It's not false. It's just not a thing in of itself.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, go deep enough with the Elder Scrolls, and that's basically everything in Mundus, right? It's all fucking construct.
I mean, I think a lot of the philosophy of Vivek is Vivek's glimpse into the inauthentic, whatever, nature of the universe, and this sort of struggle of James, who am I talking about? It's not Heidegger. Who's the thing in of itself?
Oh, thing in itself is Kant.
Kant, yeah, that's it. And the idea of figuring out the connection between the phenomenon, what we can see and experience, and the truth of existence.
Noumena is the word you're looking for.
Noumena, yeah, that's it. The reality.
Yeah.
Of what is actually real. And and so it's a
Felix, you're terrible.
Yes.
What?
In chat.
It's comments in chat.
What?
You can't always get what you want. Oh, hi. Okay, yeah, great. You get banned.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Okay.
And I love how we throw
LJ.
around so many more philosophers than you'd get in a philosophy, a philosophy course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why a lot of the lessons in the 36 lessons I didn't want to do without James on board, because I'm I know I'm gonna be able to just barely something's gonna trigger and I'm not gonna really understand what I'm talking about, and then James will take over and I'll be like, yeah, that.
I try.
That's the thing.
Classic Brits needing to pick up the pieces after an American.
After a dumbass American opens his big ass mouth, and then the Brits go, actually, what you mean is this.
Actually.
Well.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's what's going on here, is that Vivek's basically, but the mention of, loosen your equation of moods to lunar currency. I think what Vivek's kind of saying here is that you might feel like there might be more value to the old ways, or you might feel like there's more value to the new ways, but the value or the faith that you have in either of those does not actually impact your actual value as a person. Like, they don't impact you. So if you are an old school Velothi or a new school tribunal, neither is better or worse, because neither is true, or one is not any more true than the other. Vivek would argue that the tribunal is more important because it is the one that is currently in power, and if you and you must follow him to win. But Luna currency is still souls. We think so, IFW. Yeah, we're like that really does seem to be what we're.
Yeah.
Nobody's explained it to me in a way that makes more sense. So I reserve to be smarter at a later date, but at the moment it seems like that's what lunar currency is.
Well, there's so few things that refer to anything as lunar currency.
Yeah.
So it's
we don't have much to
get a
work
handle on it at all.
I would have preferred it to have something to do with Lorcon specifically, but it didn't really come that way. Anyway, later, and by that I mean much, much later, my reign will be seen as an act of the highest love, which is a return from the astral destiny and the marriages between. So Vivek's saying, you'll see one day you'll be thankful.
Yep.
Yeah.
You'll have to wait until the 5th fucking era, apparently.
Yeah.
But,
Take a while.
Yeah. After the whole world is turned into nothing but clocks and dust, you're gonna,
Beaker's Antique Shop.
Lunar currency exchange value to the dollar. I don't know, man. Those things are like NFTs. So,
bro, don't get me started.
It's an agreed upon currency. It has no basis on any on any fluctuating value. So my reign will be seen as the highest, as an act of the highest love, which is to say, according to Vivek language, that Vivek's reign was the most aligned. That her decisions were made with the closest alignment to God, to the will of the universe. Yeah.
I also want to tie that in with Dune quite specifically, because we talk about Vivek's golden path a fair bit, and I don't know whether that was something that Kirkbride was ever planning to have as being involved, just because just that sort of formulation. But that idea of kind of return from the astral destiny, if you transfer that phrase into Dune, that's humanity returning from the scattering, which was the whole culmination of Leto II's golden path anyway. And so, and I sort of see that. I'm sure I can't remember the exact line, but Leto II's the stolen journals. There's a line that says something in there that says something similar to this, that much later he will be looked back on as the savior of humanity, sort of idea. And so I just can't help but equate the two and say that this feels like a Dune reference to me more than anything else. I may be horribly off, and my radar may be tuned, just predisposed to that sort of thing, so it might be motivated reasoning, but I just can't see it as anything else.
Is there any other kind of reasoning?
In theory, yes, because motivated reasoning is a logical fallacy.
Yeah.
So a return from the astral destiny, I kind of agree. I kind of see that as like, it could be a return from the astral destiny. Could be the idea of the Kalpic cycle.
Yeah.
So returning back to the eating of the world, and returning back to Aetherius could be at the astral destiny. And the marriages between would be all the events that happen between now and then. All the major decisions but marriage, of course, is what does Vivek define marriage as? Having something murdered. It's transformation.
Yes.
It's the enantiomorph. Right?
Yeah.
So all the marriages between is all the events, all the unions and destruction and etc. that happen between
that lead up to
now and then. And so a return from the astral destiny is to return from the astral destiny means to not embrace the astral destiny, to pull back from it, I'm suggesting.
Okay.
Okay.
So by that I mean the catastrophes, which will come from all five corners. So Vivek, he doesn't capitalize catastrophes, so I don't think we're talking about any specific events, but I think Vivek's talking about all the horrible things that are going to happen in the world.
Yep.
Sure.
Everything that leads to landfall.
Yeah.
Also, what are the 5 corners? Because suddenly I'm just like, oh, hey, 4 corners, that's the House of Troubles. 5 corners, excuse me, what now, sir? You changed the numbers. Please do not do
The
this.
5 corners of the world.
Yeah.
Which are mouthful.
Which
Can't talk.
it's the idea. It's the five corners of the world, as far as I can remember, is the limits of humanity. It's the idea of the humanity having 5 limbs and the world being something related to that.
Yeah, the limitations of the world, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
I back when Kirkbride and I were having that conversation about like the way time works on Tamriel, I said there needs to be 5 directions because of the 5 corners of the world. We had 4.
Yeah.
You know, north is where everything slows down, south is where things speed up, west is the past, east is the future. There needs to be a 5th one. I don't think we ever really came up with one.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking directional. I think he was thinking past that. I think he was thinking beyond the idea of like up or down. I think it was probably way past me.
Introduce the 3rd dimension, that 3rd axis point in there.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking
the
up.
spindle of reality.
Yeah, up and down, you know, like, but I don't think he was, I think he was probably trying to create a 5th flow of time in some way, you know, like up and down or whatever. This 5th direction would be something like the maybes, the alternatives, or the things that do or do not happen, you know. So going, you know, if you go northwest, you're going into the past but slowed down. Go southwest, you're going into the past but sped up, like it's playing faster, right?
Okay.
If you go west, but if you go into the past but up, then you're going into all the different things that could have happened in the past. And if you go west but down, you're going into all the things that could not have happened, the impossibles. Okay.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's
Is
the most
Lig down?
Is Lig down? Oh,
Since
because
Lig is on the other side, would that be called down?
Yeah,
is that
I think
one of the impossibles.
I don't think Lig was impossible. I think Lig was something that could have happened but didn't.
Okay.
Impossible Tamriel would be Minecraft, something totally different, you know.
Okay.
So does that mean that if Lig is up, is that yet more confirmation that Lig is the moons? I'm going to keep pushing this theory.
Love it.
Oh boy.
Say things I'm chewing.
Yeah. Where are we? Just going over what to go over that. I mean, the catastrophes which come from all 5 corners. That if we are taking all 5 corners to mean sentient life, not to be too exclusionary of Mer and all that sort of things, then it is potentially that the idea of the idea that the catastrophes are something that are essentially inevitable unless the state of beings changes, that the catastrophes come from, for want of a better phrase, human nature.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Caused by mortals. Yeah, absolutely. Subsequent are the revisions differentiated between hope and the distraught, situations that are only required by the periodic death of the immutable. So subsequent by which he means everything after the catastrophes.
Yes.
Right.
Are the revisions differentiated between hope and the distraught?
So that's landfall, right?
I don't know.
It's history.
I think, but revisions.
Mm,
Okay, it could be history
no.
repeating.
No.
Or
it's-
people just telling the story of history.
Yeah.
Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Oh,
Yes.
No.
The revisions are the things that the rationalizations that people go through. People try to rewrite why things were, which is part of what written history is. But Felix is disagreeing.
Yeah, I got a wildly different interpretation from that. That's the difference between Chim and zero summing.
between hope and the distraught.
Okay.
Yeah.
Situations
Distraught
that
who are
are
like, oh God, I'm not real. And those who are like, wait, I'm not real. Oh man, that's cool. Like,
yeah, these are situations that are only required by the periodic death of the immutable.
and what's the immutable? The Godhead.
That sounds like we're talking about Kalpa, though.
Or
Yeah,
the
I thought
past.
so too.
Yeah.
Why not both?
Okay.
¿Por qué no los dos? Like,
I kind of agree. I kind of feel like, subsequent are the revisions differentiated between hope and the distraught, situations that are only required by the periodic death of. Yeah, I feel like that's what we're talking about here. That these are kalpic cycles, additional kalpas.
Yeah.
Which again kind of leads back to my idea behind the return from the astral destiny and the marriages between. Yeah, like that kind of works, as in like that's the sort of like the cycle of the Arbus of exploding and imploding.
So
Wouldn't
Especially
creation be
with
very
the
mutable
next
though?
sentence.
does that make the astral destiny the Kalpic cycle?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that tracks.
And when Neil asks, wouldn't creation be very, very mutable though? The act of creation would be, but the existence of the Arbus is not.
Yeah.
Because this is because we are positing that the Godhead does not wake up. It is immutable in the respect that if the Godhead stops dreaming, we'll be the last people to notice.
Yeah.
It's not worth thinking about. Like it's like asking what's outside of the edge of the of reality, the edge of the universe. What's outside of the universe? The answer is it doesn't matter. You know,
it doesn't antimatter either.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't do anything. You know,
exactly.
It's not reality. It can't exist. So, you know, the answer of like, you know, what is the universe expanding into doesn't. That's not a.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a paradigm disconnection that's happening here.
Now on the ground, the exact texture of Nirn is very mutable, but the fact that Nirn exists within the paradigm of how the Orbis works is the immutable part. When the cycle ends, it's going to start again because it has to, until it doesn't anymore.
Cosmic time is repeated. I wrote this in an earlier life. We know what that means. If we're talking about the Kalpic cycle. An imitation of submersion is love's premonition. All right, look. An imitation of submersion. I've often maintained, and we've kind of drifted in this direction before, that the captured sage is the sensory deprivation that echoes the dreamer of Anu in the sun.
Yes.
And so an imitation of submersion, I believe, is a reference to and it's an imitation of the sensory deprivation of the dreamer, and that it is love's premonition is to say that this is how, that an imitation of submersion is how you attain an approximation of love, of understanding God's will. That's the best I've got. I'm very excited to hear contrary ideas. So the answer is we don't know and we shouldn't care. Yeah. Earlier life Vect the mortal versus Vect the god. I think so, Yagni. Yeah. By which I mean the day you will read about outside of yourself in an age of gold. It's folly into the underworld, by which I mean the day you will read about outside of yourself in an age of gold. That sounds very much like the age of gold being the Amaranth dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's in total what this entire sentence is about, but I'm trying to pick apart how it's about that.
Yeah. Well, I just, yeah, as you say, imitation of submersion, I sort of read as sensory deprivation. In order for it to be about Amaranth, we need to equate Amaranth and love, basically.
Well, yeah, maybe that's what love's premonition is that the imitation of submersion, this is as close as you're going to get to knowing what Amaranth is like.
Yes.
When we say it's folly into the underworld, is that the fall into the destruction, the day that the world dies? By which I mean the day that you will read about it, so at that point you'll be reading about yourself because you're outside that. Did any of that make sense? Was that a sentence at all?
It made sense, but I'm just not sure how it's sort of...
It sounds like folly is a verb almost. It's folly into the underworld.
It's a folly is a mistake. It's either a mistake or it's an imitation. But yeah, it's sort of the folly belonging to it is how I process that. So I'm still reading it as a noun, I guess. Unless you're talking about folly as a hopeless expedition expressed as a verb.
That is kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sort of getting Orpheus vibes from it, but I don't quite know how to connect that.
I can't get that part. But then, by which I mean the day you will read by which I mean the day you will read about outside of yourself in an age of gold, it's pretty clearly the Amaranth dream, the Amaranthine dream. Especially when you take on the next sentence, for on that day, which is a shadow of the sacrificial concept, so that day is there has been a sacrifice made. In other words, the Amaranth begins the dream, and sacrifices consciousness in a way by just simply dreaming the world, the age of gold. All history is obliged to see me for what you are, in love with evil. To keep one's powers intact at such a stage is to allow for the existence of what can only be called a continual spirit. That sounds like Amaranth. To be able to or
Chim.
Or Chim. The two are very related. To be able to confront the reality of like the shadow self and to love everything, including that which is evil, is to sort of attain that state, and then to maintain your powers, it grants you what is called a continual spirit. In other words, you are undying at that point.
Yep.
Make of your love a defense against the horizon. Pure existence is only granted to the holy, which comes in a myriad of forms, half of them frightening, and the other half divided into equal parts, purposeless and assured. Oh, Christ. So
defense against
the horizon, the oncoming evil, the oncoming terror,
the oncoming terror, or the end
Mhm.
It's an end of a thing. Just make a defense against the horizon. You are making a defense against endings.
Yeah. Well, but you're also making a defense against goals and destinations to
Mhm.
some extent.
True.
Jack Sparrow, bring me that horizon. Like, you know,
Yeah.
the where we're going. You lose that.
Um,
Well, that also ties into the whole sensory deprivation side of it, that you are cut off from everything. You are only
It's-
yourself.
Yeah.
yeah, it's a defense against all endings. Yeah, which
Yeah.
means the
Permanence.
which means the continuation despite the horizon. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all endings, including the happy ones.
Yeah, including
Yeah,
it. Yeah, it's
exactly.
anything at all.
Yeah.
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 Um,
You don't get anywhere. You don't also don't die.
Yeah.
So pure existence is only granted to the holy, which come in a myriad of forms, half of them frightening. That's obvious. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and the other half divided into equal parts, purposeless and assured. So purposeless and confident, wandering, okay, and
Mm.
you know,
Or assured, as in guaranteed by a thing.
mhm.
But I was going to pick up on the holy bit of it, because one way that I've seen the idea of holiness expressed, and as in literally seen the words translated this way in certain iterations of the Bible, is that instead of holy, the word separate is used, because holiness implies a distinctness from everything else. And
Ooh.
so that's sort of getting to the and so if we're talking about, hang on, where's the precise word?
Distinguished?
I can't see it. It pure existence is granted only to the holy. I can vaguely pull something together by way of Spinoza out of that, but it's a bit of a stretch. That if pure existence in this sense, I would kind of say is to be the amaranth in the Elder Scrolls, but it's also the idea of the Spinoza's biggest work was basically positing that there is only one substance in the world, and by substance he was basically talking about matter. In to put a long story short, so it's so to talk about pure existence is granted only to the holy. So to that which is distinct, but it's Spinoza's formulation of substance which makes me think about it. So again, can someone else talk while I dig up the line?
Yeah, sure. It's like holiness in to make matters worse, holiness is actually mentioned a couple of times in the 36 lessons, and it's never almost never in what we traditionally think of as holiness. There's
Found
the
it.
Oh, good. Oh wow, that was fast. I had more to
Sorry.
go. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
By substance, I mean that which is in itself and is conceived through itself. In other words, that of which a conception can be formed independently of any other conception.
Self-conception.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is pure existence in this context then a reference to the original spirits, the matterless spirits? That if you're truly holy, you can achieve that matterless existence again?
Or that you are self-created.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's what that
Which
means.
Which
Yeah.
again goes back to the name of God, Yahweh, I am that which I am.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, which the holy, so the holy come in a myriad of forms, half of them frightening, and the other half divided into equal parts, purposeless and assured. Are we talking about the Aedra and the Daedra?
See, that's how I always read that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of feel like that's the point.
Yep.
Or it's like some of the Aedra and Daedra are actually good and relevant, and others serve no purpose.
Yes. Sure.
Yeah.
And if you had any doubt that Sermon 35 was about Chim, late is the lover that comes to this by any other walking way than the fifth, which is the number of the limit of this world.
And if we're going by 5 as in the corners of this world, 5 is the number of the limit of this world, which is mortality.
Yeah.
The limit of 5, which is the limit of people, is mortality.
And as Vivek has proposed, and a lot of people have gotten to on their own, Chim is only attainable in truth by mortals. That Daedra demonstrate a consciousness that is similar, but not the same, not nearly as the same quality. So, for example, the Daedra, I theorize, and I think some people have agreed with me, exist in a state of something like Amaranth, and the reality that they are dreaming is their Daedric plane.
Yes.
Okay.
And that invasions of Daedric planes into Tamriel, in other words, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, are the
And
invasion
Elder
of
Scrolls
a
Online.
yeah, and Elder Scrolls Online. Well, a different Daedra, but still, are the Sotha still discusses. Oh, good. It's always good to agree with Sotha.
Yeah.
Is the idea of a different dream invading the Tamriel actual, the actual dream,
Interesting. I love it.
So, but the reason why the Daedra cannot be said to attain to have a state of Amaranth, or even for that matter a state of Chim, is that I don't think they know they're doing it. I don't think they understand the process, and I can certainly suggest that they've never not done it.
Yeah.
And you can't really understand something unless you can step outside of it. And which is why self-actualization only happens after the accumulation of the id into of the ego into the self. You have to then separate. You have to do that and then separate. You can't do it. Can't do one before the other. They're less moody, more constant in the vibe of yeah. As a god, he can see the walls, but he can't see the door. Yeah, that makes sense. Only a mortal can see the door. Strive to be more than just another cog in the gears of reality. This is the fifth law of gears, which urges us to reach for the even the impossible dream. That's my boy Tuttle right there. Okay. The lover is the highest country and a series of beliefs. He is the sacred city bereft of a double. In other words, the ruling king. The uncultivated land of monsters is the rule. The uncultivated land of monsters is the rule.
Huh?
What rule? We're talking about rules now?
Yeah.
Okay. I think I had something for this that came up in like Facebook years ago. I don't think I'll be able to find it.
Oh, please tell me it was something in the thread, because yeah.
I think it was.
Oh no. Well, it may not have been
Although
serious.
I think
Oh.
that thread is still going, by the way, on
Yeah.
occasion.
Yeah. Just to translate that one, this was I think it was in either
Early days of Memospore, yeah.
either 2014 or 2015,
Mhm.
when someone posited the existence of a Daedric Prince of Minor Inconveniences.
Mhm.
And it just sort of got out of hand.
Come for the knuckles, stay for the chowder.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
that's really
It looks like a spider under a whoopee cushion.
Yeah.
What?
That's literally
fuck, the Redguard guard of Ga. Fuck, I dropped my car keys. Like,
yeah. The Daedric god of why won't this fucking drawer open? Yeah. Yeah. And so anyway, I the uncultivated land of monsters is the rule. I do not get this. The first thing that comes to mind is the idea of like the wild lands outside of cities. God of why did I come into this room again?
Yes.
Oh, I identify so much with that.
So much.
okay. All right. I think I have something.
Okay.
Unless someone else wants to go first.
No, Felix, go.
I'm
Okay.
nothing but straws here.
So instead of just looking at the one sentence of the uncultivated land of monsters is the rule.
Uh-huh.
I want us to all look at the sentence that comes before that and after that. So
Mhm.
he is the sacred city bereft of a double. The uncultivated land of monsters is the rule. This is clearly attested by Anu and his double, which love knows never really happened. All right, couple of things. I want people to, because like when I sort of put all those together, when I was thinking of city, it reminded me of I forget exactly how it goes, but it's like man, God, city, state,
Yep.
like
Mhm.
so that of like okay, but that can only happen through the basis of the like wild wilderness, the uncultured land, the sprawling morass of creation that is untamed, as yet to be defined
Oh.
into rule.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
you
the
nailed it.
wilderness is the default, and
Yeah.
anything that happens
This-
that
this
is
can-
civilization or
Yes.
growth or
But it
whatever
has to happen
be
from that.
from that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that's also why
yeah,
like
yeah.
the sentence with Anu kind of made that all click to me. So there we go.
Yeah.
awesome.
I was going to I think you've definitely got it, but I was going to throw in the comment from Yagni as well, that the idea of the law wilderness in the law of the jungle, kind of survival of the fittest sort of thing, that wilderness is not without its own rules,
Well, yeah.
is the thing.
Yeah.
So it functions in its own way.
I mean, the natural order is quite frankly terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like
Little bit.
zombie
Yeah.
snails,
Right.
blood, death,
Yeah.
reproductive cycle. It's just like, excuse me, existence is objectively terrifying.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all awful.
Yeah.
Sir, I would like a rebate. Like,
This is. Oh no.
Yeah.
No! I need to speak to the manager. No.
Yeah,
is clearly
God's final
attested by
message to
Anu.
his creation as per Douglas Adams. We're sorry for the inconvenience.
We are sorry for the inconvenience. Yeah, that's right.
I get
The
to the
last
gates
message
of
of
heaven, and
God.
before they send me straight down hell, I'm like, excuse me, quick question. Number one, what the fuck?
Yeah.
May
So-
I submit a bug report?
This is clearly attested by Anu and his double, which love knows never really happened. So this is the suggestion that because so you could think of this in very literal or poetic sense. I would suggest the latter, but for the literal minded of you like me, if Anu is dreaming reality, then anything that is not Anu or Anu's dream does not exist.
Mm-hmm.
In a more poetic sense, Anu's damage that is creating the arena can be said to be caused by the betrayal of Anu by Padme. But if we consider the like love as the well, I lost it. Fuck. It was something
That
about
burp destroyed you.
yeah, it was something about losing the idea of Padme having to have done what it did because Anu would have dreamt this dream either way. Possibly because of the inheritance of the Godhead's will, or because Anu had to dream the dream the way that it's dreamt,
Yep.
because love is the like the inevitable result of Anu's dream.
Yeah.
I like that.
although
Also,
I
no, go ahead.
I was also going to vaguely steer this in the direction that I know that Michael would have done, because he's a big proponent of the idea that Anu and Padme didn't happen. It was just
Right.
Anu and Anu's shadow self.
Yeah,
But-
yes.
Oh.
That's
There
what I
is
was
no-
going to bring
there
up.
is
There you
no
go. Thank you.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, of how like Anu had to create Padme in his mind to live with the guilt.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
That's what I was going to suggest. So,
Mhm.
yeah, we're on the same page. Huzzah.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah,
the Godhead is real, ultimately aren't Anu and Padme both lies?
Have you never
What?
had a dream where you're in it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I'd never completely equated Anu with the dreamer, with the Godhead.
Ah,
Oh.
okay.
Okay.
Well,
No.
okay,
and-
capital ANU is the dream.
Maybe. Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Capital
it's
A,
multiple
lowercase
layers.
n and u is the self-projection.
I
Well,
would argue that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
What?
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause-
I think that Anu, in any sense, is the dreamer and the dream of the Godhead.
Okay.
What I don't understand is why the Godhead had to dream the story of Anu and Padme. That's the why did the Godhead just not simply create Mundus or excuse me, the Arbic reality? And I think the answer is because the Godhead as a singular entity does not have the shadow self to create the conflict.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's the reason. But if that's the case, then I don't understand why authoritatively you didn't just, well, okay, but I'm forgetting my Gnosticism is what I'm doing.
Yes.
So,
How
so
did we forget about the Gnosticism?
yeah, so
Self-reflection.
I always forget about the Gnosticism. So the overall containing entity has to then dream the gods of conflict, that conflict, and then
Yeah.
the gods, the conflict of the gods then creates reality. But the one exterior unknowable is not does not take on an existence that we can comprehend, and therefore cannot itself create an existence that we can comprehend. It has to create something
Well-
else to do it for it.
Yes. Yes, and Yagni's posted the bit in chat that
Yeah.
kind of backs that up in the monomyth, which is that Anu is everything. Anu created Anuiel, who was the soul of everything,
There
and
it is.
Anuiel created Sithis as a mirror to discover what he was not.
Okay. I still just assumed that the dreamer had created Anu first, but I
It did,
see that
I think.
now.
So-
I mean, well, you're talking about a state of non-time anyway. I mean, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Yeah.
not
Maybe.
really a first and a last, but I
Maybe if you're
maybe,
assuming,
yeah.
if you're
Myth-
assuming that
mythically
Anu
speaking, yeah.
came from as an amaranth from a previous reality, there's nothing that's saying that reality was not subject to time.
So,
Speaking of
a-
time,
a
we've only got 15 minutes left.
Oh, okay. Jeez. All
Oh,
right.
half an hour.
Um,
No, half an hour. My bad. Yeah,
Ah,
we're good.
Okay.
And-
So a couple other things though, with regards to like dreaming and whatnot, and kind of sort of answered by Vermina in universe, but hey, if we dream and we generally try not to think of bad things, well, then why do nightmares still happen?
Right.
What's causing that internal, us to functionally scare ourselves and then to try and explain that away? What is the reasoning for that? What does that show? Why are some nightmares function kind of like a horror movie and others are more like, and I was there naked on stage in front of everyone I've ever known? Like,
Yeah.
like why are they kind of different, but the terror is equally there and also feels incredibly real?
Mhm.
Like so to go back to Honor the Dreamer and why did he have to create Padme in that way, is maybe there was something going on in his life, whether it was a heartbreak, jealousy, having to sever a connection in some way, and this was the dream that came about in terms of how to sever that connection. There's always tons of things we can interpret in dreams, like a fire may represent warmth, it may also represent a warning, or to not get too close. You could have like I remember having a dream one time where and for the record, I pretty much have only ever lucidly dreamed. So for me, when I'm in a dream, it's kind of like, oh, we're along for a dream. All right, let's see where this takes me. But at any point, if I decide to, I can just be like, nope, I'm out of here. Like, oh no, I don't like that. I want to change that. And then I like do that. But for the most part, I'm just kind of like there along for the ride. And there was this one dream where I remember it quite clearly. It's like a beautiful, like cloudless night. The sun is high, and I'm in this giant labyrinth. And I'm getting very, very frustrated. Now, eventually at one point, because like no matter what, it seemed like the labyrinth never, like I was already in it, right? So there's no entrance, no exit, and there's just like the moon up in the sky. It's a full moon, and I feel like it's mocking me for not knowing how to, navigate this labyrinth where there's no, like I've not been given any threat or anything to check it out. There's just nothing, aimless meandering. and I'm getting increasingly frustrated at myself, but also at the moon. And then I eventually was like, you know what? No, fuck this. And I just like made a grunt of, "Rrr," and then I woke myself up, and then went back to sleep. Now, of course, it should come as no surprise to people to hear that I had this dream around the time of getting closer to graduating high school, trying
Wow.
to navigate life. And, okay, where am I going? What am I doing? Where have I even come from? I have kind of just like dicked around in high school. What do I want to do in my future? And so it's kind of like, oh, look, however you want to interpret it as, like whether the phrase of shoot for the moon and you'll land among the stars, that could be an interpretation because Lord knows we had that in a few of our fucking classrooms in high school. Could also be, the world of possibility, the cosmos are yours. We try these kind of aspirational goals, but I'm here stuck in the muck, lost in the darkness of this maze. But I can clearly see that there's like good and beautiful things. How do I reach that? Why do I feel like it's mocking me? There's all these kind of interpretations that you could have about this dream that was a reflection of like unspoken, fears, anxieties, challenges, and struggles that I was experiencing at the age of like 16 or 17 years old.
Mhm.
So, hey, have I had similar dreams to that? Yeah, there have been a few other times where I've been in a cave, but also it's kind of changed. There's still usually like, oh, but I can see a little bit of light, or I can see like the night sky through it. And those dreams have always happened during times of change or potential change in my life where I've wanted to or needed to navigate that in some way, right? And so I don't need to be a clinical psychologist to realize like, oh, hey, my dreams are kind of trying to tell me something in a very weird, artistic, creative, and expressive way. Now, why do that and that way? What is the purpose of this? I don't fucking know. That's one of the great mysteries of life. But in terms of interpreting and realizing, hey, why am I dreaming about this? What's going on in my life or that I've been thinking about recently that's doing this? And so I feel like there's probably something similar for why Anu dreamt the dream that they did. So I just want to be clear about that as well. In terms of like, oh, why like it shadows up. It could be that. It could also legit be like a bad breakup. Like I don't know.
And that's well, it makes me wonder if anybody who frequently lucidly dreams has nightmares.
Yes,
do.
but
Hmm?
I can
sorry,
fix
go
them.
ahead.
How about you, Felix?
Well, yeah. Like I usually fix them, especially if it gets to a
Okay.
point where like I'm too, like I said, I can either like yeet myself from the dream or I can change what happens in it. So for example, again, I had a dream like in high school, but like earlier, it's like grade 10 or 11 or something. And I had this dream where it starts off fine of like me and all my friends were just like kind of chilling, hanging out, and then we find out that like a friend actually like died horrifically in an accident. We're like, oh my god, no! And then like more friends start suspiciously dying, and like in more very obvious like this wasn't an accident, this was murder. And suddenly it's like some organization is coming for me and my friends, and it's just getting so bad. We're like, no wait, no, we have to like try and hide, and it was legit getting very like horrifying and terrifying. And at one point they like finally get to me and like I'm shot in my dream and I'm like there dying in like the hallway outside of my bedroom. But I'm like, no, it can't end like this. And then I swear to God, the dream rewinds like 10 seconds and suddenly I have a gun. I'm like, oh, okay, this is how we fix this. And then like I'm waiting because I know that, oh, we just rewound it. The guys come up the stairs, I shoot them dead, and then I realize, okay, so this is what I can do, and then I just rewind the dream while having the gun, which of course has infinity bullets, and go back and like tell friends like, hey, no, like there's like this organization, I don't know what they are, but they're targeting all of us. Here's what we're gonna do. By the way, I have a gun now, and like let's go, let's do this. And then it was just like getting all the bad guys before they started killing off all my friends, and then it turned into a really great like it started as a nightmare, and then it became just like an amazing action flick that would make like John Woo blush. It was delightful.
And
So guns are the answer, kids.
yeah.
God bless America.
Yeah. By the way, I have a gun now is literally like every John Wick movie. But
Gotta love
Yeah.
the John Wick movies.
Oh, there was a comment in chat that I just want to sort of bring up about what the part of what Anu and his double, which love knows never really happened.
Mhm.
If we're having the idea of love as becoming a ruling king and in being involved with Chim and so on and so forth. Chim it involves self-creation, and
okay, all right.
he who enters paradise enters his own mother, etc. And all of those sorts of links. But if you are doing that, and I also seem to remember that it somewhere in Vex teaching was talking about returning to the first blush of Anu Padme, the foul lie, the irrefutable for a span,
Right.
and that sort of stuff. And so, but it's that idea of, again, we got it in that passage, that the foul lie. But it's the idea of, if you are creating yourself through Chim or Amaranth, I think Amaranth is possibly the better example of it, then you are not actually participating in creation as a whole. Therefore, you are not participating in the Arabis in the same way. So it never really happened, because that's what didn't create you. And hang on, I found it. It was Felix Aroni. Was saying that
there's too many Felixes here.
That it was the idea of rejecting Anu and Padhome to assert your own existence.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you make Anu and Padme a lie because you are self-created.
Right.
That
yes.
tracks.
Yeah.
Which is the idea of that which is holy.
Yes.
Is something that is self-created. Yeah.
Yes.
So we've still got like a little bit less than half of this scripture to go. I think we're just going to have to do it next time. We're going to have to wrap it up next time.
Agreed.
36 is pretty straightforward, but I anticipate having a very lengthy discussion on the
rest of this,
the overall nature of the 36 lessons after Sermon 36.
Yeah.
So we're probably going to whip through 36 and then spend the rest of the session talking about everything. I do kind of want to wrap everything up in a little bow. So let's get to 35 next time, the rest of 35 next time, because we still have some stuff to cover. And we will see everybody then. Till then, everybody wave bye-bye.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.